for another SCLC Today's program. Ladies and gentlemen, I am very excited because we're going to talk about our convention, the 65th convention of SCLC, dealing with education, economics, and gun reform, requirements for a better community, talking about building houses, talking about the appraisership in terms of the quality of homes and communities. Holistically, we're going to touch on a lot of things. You know why? Because we have our friend back, none other than our bureau chief out of Washington, D.C., Attorney Kimble. Attorney Kimble, welcome to the show again.
Thank you for having me back. It's always great.
Well, you've been here several times, and every time you on, my friend, people get excited. Who do you have with you today?
The great man.
I know he is.
The great man, Thaddaus Dawson.
Yes.
The president and CEO of 10,000 Minority Appraisers. But that title actually diminishes everything he's done. Thaddaus is an expert on black property values, black economics, and the support and the history of how the country has diminished access to credit and capital for African Americans. And so this branch he's gone off on appraisals is one that's needed because we've been, as the articles said, all the lawsuits, African Americans have been robbed of their value of their properties by this process. So we're going to talk today about the real estate appraisal issue, but we're also going to talk about hedge funds and venture capitalists and the deleterious effect they've had on the economy, especially on African Americans. Right? So it's all this money, and as you know, I think we've talked about this. Next year, the new tax bill has to be done. There is all these tax provisions are going to expire, and so we're trying to get Congress and the government to make sure that they don't just keep giving billionaires tax breaks, which they didn't use to buy up all of our stuff, and leave us without anything. And I will put two more data points in, then I'm going to turn to Thaddaus, but they all tie in as we talk. And housing being one of the key things here, the average income it takes to live in the top 20 markets in America is about $125,000 a year for a single person to live comfortably. For a family, it's like $260,000. The median income in those areas is like $69,000 or $59,000. So that means half the people in America make less than half of what it takes to live comfortably. And if you if you overlay that with the stat that says 66% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, you get proof positive that over almost 70% of Americans.
Not African Americans, but Americans. It's worse.
Everybody. No, this is white, black, brown, and 70% of the American population is making less than what they need to live comfortably in the country. And part of it starts with the way our tax code is treated venture capitalists. So, thanks. I gave you a whole bunch to deal with. But tell everyone about 10,000 Minority Appraisers and your efforts.
So, we started 10,000 Minority Appraisers Foundation to address the disparity in property values for African Americans. According to the Brookings Institute, there was a loss between 23 and 25%, totaling about $150 to $200 billion in lost equity for black people. And I started to advocate for black people. But then as I traveled the country and met with Hispanics, Native Americans, and other communities, the undervaluation of property is not just a black problem, it's not just a brown problem, it's actually an American problem. So part of the reason is the mentality of appraisers has been one of scarcity. If I teach you, then you're going to come back and take my business. And with that mentality, it's caused a workforce development issue. Right now, over 25% of all appraisers are over 65 years old. Over 40% are between 50 and 65. So you have a workforce that is over 65% over 50 years old. And the current
would you call this old school?
Man, that's older than old school.
That's older than old school.
And less than 7% are under 25. So there's nobody coming back to replace these appraisers. And because of this undervaluation, America is losing a lot of equity. So if black people are losing 150 to 200 billion dollars, the Native American and across the tribal lands and the federal government are losing trillions of dollars because they're operating on fee schedules that are over 30 years old.
But that is, I think you just hit it, but could you elaborate a little more about why African Americans are such a small percentage in terms of the appraisals?
Well, again, it's been a very closed, nepotistic type of profession.
Nepotism.
It's the third least diverse profession in the country,
Okay.
behind farming and lumberjacking.
Wow.
So, again,
Wow.
most of the time, to be able to get into the profession, you invest that time in a family member or somebody that's really close.
So that is, you can't go to school and be trained for this and go into this career.
Well, you can and you can't. So one of the barriers to entry in the profession is that you have to work for 2 years for free to accumulate your 1,000 hours necessary to get your licenses and certification. Now, you can get the coursework, but most of the time, in order to get the actual experience, there's nobody that looks like us in the field, so you have a very difficult time.
Right.
So we have those barriers to entry. So one of the things that we did or we have done,
Gotcha.
which I'm very proud of, since April 24th, we are the first nationally certified appraisal apprenticeship program through the U.S. Department of Labor. So
That's great.
we will be able to not only pay folks to learn how to become appraisers, but we'll also be able to pay the appraisers to teach them how to become appraisers.
Okay.
So this is breaking
By having that partnership.
Exactly, and this is breaking down the barriers to entry. Also, we are also in mitigating those barriers to entry. We will be able to help with childcare, housing, and transportation. So again, these are our barriers to entry, and it's not going to be just us solving this. It's going to be a combination of public-private partnerships. We're working with several agencies in the federal government. We started our 1890 tour this past year, touring all the 1890 land-grant colleges, introducing real estate appraising as a career alternative pathway. And it's been very exciting. We've been able to place close to 20 students in summer internships with the U.S. Forest Service all over the country, including Puerto Rico. So we've got students from Langston, Fort Valley. Yeah, we just placed 3 from Fort Valley due to Dr. Fields nagging us. We've got representatives from Alcorn. I got in trouble when I was in Mississippi and said Alcorn. We have Kentucky State, Central State, Tennessee State, Tuskegee. So it's been the highlight of my career this last year, touring the 1890 land grant colleges. And, you know, like anything else, our 1890 and our HBCUs get less than 10% of all black college students, but we graduate over 80%.
Not to put you on the spot, are we talking racism?
I wouldn't call it racism. It's just ism. You know? It is. That's
I like
it.
that.
It just
I
is.
like
It's
that.
ism.
It
You know,
is ism.
Yeah, it's
I like that.
it's just ism.
Yeah, I understand.
We've been building brick without straw for a long time, and we do it because we care. I get tired, but then when I get to these campuses and I see these kids, I'm sorry, I can't call them kids. These young people
Right.
and these young adults, I get energized, and the conversations that we have are always invigorating. We have debates about music and all kinds of stuff, and so basically, the bias that you see in appraising is, by the time you see it in an appraisal, it's bias on steroids. Everybody is talking about bias, but they're really missing the point. The point is really not about the bias. The point is the appraisal model is broken. It's over 50 years old and it hasn't been updated. Now you were old enough to remember rotary dial telephone.
Right, absolutely.
Now what kind of phone you got right now? I see you got an iPhone. Now imagine trying to stream
That's right.
on your rotary dial phone.
That's right.
that dog don't hunt. That's the appraisal profession.
That's right. I
So
see.
the-
So
the-
you're
the-
still behind.
The methodology is outdated and antiquated. So, and the appraisers are traumatized.
Wow.
So
And who's at fault? Who's to blame for this, Thaddaus?
that's the one thing, Dr. Steele. Nobody wants to have any accountability in the space. You know, you had the head of the Appraisal Foundation for 34 years. In that open hearing, said he just now recognized or heard about racism in the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, so
Where has he been? What rock he been under?
I really can't speak to that.
Right, I understand.
But then once they started talking to him about it, he said it was a personal attack. I'm like,
wow.
to me, at what point is accountability?
Wow.
If I'm running something for 34 years
Yes.
and I don't have no results,
Yes.
then you attack me, please.
Right.
Because
You
I
told me
haven't
about
done
it
my
10 years
job.
ago. You told me about the racial bias 10 years ago.
I've been appraising for 37 years, and I've seen it for 37 years.
Right.
So now they just now started acknowledging it over the last couple of years. But when you start asking questions and ask for accountability, everybody starts speaking Scooby-Doo. there is no answers. But even further, again, back to the technology. The National Association of Realtors has just been sued. It's been broken up. The reason being, smaller company, more technology. The game is changing. Real estate appraisers haven't changed. They haven't apologized. Now, the leading appraisal organization, who was the appraisal arm of the National Association of Realtors up until about 20 years ago, they haven't apologized, and they've been at the forefront of redlining racism valuation policies. But now they're the head of diversity and inclusion.
And the innovation of the new.
Which I get tickled. I mean, let's just put the pyromaniac at the end of the fire hose and help put out the fire that you started. But they just got back to the Appraisal Foundation. And the reason why they came back, they're in the appraisal education business. Now, everybody is following them. Again, if you having heart problems, are you going to see a podiatrist?
No, sir.
So in the appraisal space, everybody feels like somebody else is taking care of it.
Right.
Nobody has any responsibility. Nobody has any accountability.
What about efficacy? I know Attorney Kimble always talk about efficacy. That's what about that?
Again, as we were talking earlier, most of the people that are advocating in the appraisal space are listening to WIIFM.
And what is that?
What's in it for me? They're being disingenuous, self-serving. So again, you got all these people following the Appraisal Diversity Initiative, and to their credit, they've given out over almost 1,000 scholarships, appraisal scholarships. Now, and they will parade that number, but then when you ask, how many people have finished the program?
0.
We back to Scooby-Doo. We don't keep those numbers. Look, how many jobs have you created?
What's that have to do with anything?
We gave out the scholarships. Wells Fargo. Oh, we spent the money. You know, so.
But where's the money going, Thaddaus? When you say we spent the money.
Come on, Dr. Steele. Why you putting me on the spot?
You're the expert.
Folks already don't like me. So I'm trying to make friends and build bridges.
Well, you'll make them after this program.
So where is the money going? That is a good question. Well, you got the Appraisal Diversity Initiative. On that initiative, you have the Appraisal Institute, who is the leader. So again, they got the best books and the best education. But when I talked about the age and the diversity, so back to being old and antiquated, again, they're trying to stay relevant. So the money is to keep them at the table and relevant, because over 25% of all appraisers are over 65. Over 40% are between 50 and 65. So again, you got a workforce that's over 65% over 50 years old.
So you gotta take you gotta take your scholarship you get, if someone who to give it to, they got to find somebody to train. They still got to go through the apprenticeship project.
No. So you have to, you take the 3 classes, then you find a supervisor to train you. But okay, here comes the Appraisal Institute to the rescue. They got a program called PAREA, Practical Applications in Real Estate. So now you can do all this, and you can get all of your experience online. And everybody at the table is, oh yes, we're part of the Appraisal Diversity Initiative. Now, again, this is where I asked the rough question. None of those lenders that are part of that organization are going to hire one single person who finishes that virtual training. You haven't looked at anything. So you haven't experienced anything. So again, but the Appraisal Institute is getting paid because they got the only game in town for that.
And
So,
who's paying them?
Dr. Steele, there you go again. That would be all those people listed on there. Chase Bank, I know they gave them $3 million.
Well, we need to know this.
Wells Fargo.
Yeah.
And then everybody else is in-kind services.
Bureau chief,
Yes.
where do we go from here? And I just thank Mr. Dawson for him waking me up. How many people that we deal with on a daily basis, and so-called people who should be helping our folks and know about this, why we don't know all of this?
Well, one, we've got to talk to them. I mean, we got to bring people like Thaddaus on. You've been very good about letting me do this. Hijack. I call it hijacking your show.
You can do it anytime. With what you bring it, you can do it anytime.
But and I want to take a second here because Thaddaus won't get enough credit for this. 10 years ago, we were in D.C. I forget what we were working on. Something with the maybe Department of Interior or GAO or somebody. Anyway, he brought this to my attention, saying there's a huge lack of, there's a big diversity of appraisal bias. It's a big deal. So we went to see a couple of members of Congress. This is 10 years ago. We went to see a couple members of Congress. And Thaddaus went back to the Appraisal Association and said, hey, we got a chance to do some advocacy work on this and try to get, because what they did was, and Thaddaus, correct me if I'm wrong on the facts, but they ended up changing the rules, because it used to be appraisers had to be licensed in every state. But because there was a shortage of appraisers, because of all this change in the age, they changed, instead of getting more minority appraisers hired or brought in, they changed the rules so that you could operate across state lines.
No, they changed that, the hours and the requirements. So you still have to have multiple licenses in multiple jurisdictions, but they're working on some things now where a national license, which would be good. And one of the things that really happens in the space, the best residential appraising is from the VA. And the reason being is the VA doesn't care about the bank, it doesn't care about the realtor, it doesn't care about the builder. The VA's number one concern is the veteran. And so their chief appraiser, he won't mind telling you that it's not about the veteran, it's all about the veteran. And so they have what is called the reconsideration of value process so you can contest the appraisal or you can appeal the appraisal. HUD just recently adopted that in the last couple of weeks. That will go a long way to being able to do it. But the other piece is being able to roll that out. The lenders or the underwriters were always able to do it. Now the consumer has to do it. And one of the things that we had started last year was being able to help articulate the argument. Because when you ask for the reconsideration of value, it can't be an emotional argument. It can't be, I think, I feel. It has to be substantive and it has to be objective. So there still needs to be some help with that. But now they're also doing other precautions as far as words. They've got, so you can data mine for the words for the bias. But again, that doesn't fix the fundamental problem of the valuation model being antiquated. Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae have been experimenting with data collectors, and then they have an independent third party to do the appraisal. That mitigates some of the bias. But what it also does, now they've got a database all across the country where you can isolate a price per square foot anywhere in the country. Again, the technology is available to update the appraisal process. So it needs to be modernized. If you modernize it and move to evidence-based, data-driven analysis, you won't eliminate the bias, but you will mitigate it, because now you've got the data and you don't have to worry about the words. You can use data, you can use charts. Data science is there. the numbers do not lie.
Yeah.
So,
But let me ask you this, because now we're talking about AI. So if we got these data points, the AI will link, the historical biases will still play into the current bias because of the AI, right? The AI only uses the old data, uses the data that's out there. So South Atlanta's numbers are going to be lower than North Atlanta's numbers in perpetuity unless we do something to balance out that conversation.
but again, you're moving towards. You're not going to fix this overnight, but you do have a solution to get closer. And again, the undervaluation is an America problem. It's not a black problem. If you look at the U.S. government and the Native American lands, they're losing trillions of dollars a year due to outdated fee schedules. And when I say the fee schedules, I'm referring to easements and right-of-ways going across government property for oil and gas lines, water lines, fiber optic lines, and power lines. I mean, just cell phone tower usage alone is based on what cell phones were trading for 25, 30 years ago.
But let me ask you this question then. Dustin, I'll get to your follow-up.
No, go ahead.
But when we go down this process, we're looking at the fact that, all these African American communities were broken up. And I mean, historically, there's all this, like the covenants, the red line, all these things that factor into what property values are today because those things still have, so that is a black problem. I mean, a lot of this stuff was written as racial covenants against us. So that lingering effect is something we still have to deal with, right?
Oh, absolutely. So what I'm always saying is if you want to change some of this, you need to have some representation. So in order to have representation, you've got to be at the table. If you're not at the table, then you're on the menu.
That is, how do you get to the table?
So we now have the first ever National Appraisal Apprenticeship Program that we will be, as of April 24th, we will be rolling out in the fourth quarter across the country. We'll be partnering with several of the land grant institutions in those areas. And we'll be having strategic partners across the country as we roll this out. We're updating our website and our marketing and logos to be able to take on the expected onslaught in the space. But also, it's a workforce development program because of the lack of appraisers. And those numbers I gave you for the federal government, they work for the county tax assessor's office.
Oh, okay.
There's no place in the country where there's not a county, a city, a state that's impacted by valuation. It has such a significant impact on the global supply chain, but it's given very, very little respect. And most people, when they think about appraising, they just think about the residential appraisal. And that's just a very small piece of the pie. The government is about to spend billions of dollars on roads, infrastructure, bridges, highways,
and we see
and
these
fiber
appraisals
optics.
out there, and I haven't seen African American yet.
Well, we're working on increasing those numbers, and with our plan, with just our 1890 schools alone, we'll have a pipeline of 1,100 appraisers within a 5-year period. Towards the end of the year, we'll start touring the 1994 tribal colleges. In a 5-year period, we'll have 2,000 in the pipeline. So that's 3,000 right there. So again, the numbers in 5 years, our folks will be transitioning in as other people phase out.
And you actually have the HBCUs working with you.
I have the 1890 land grants working with us, and we're working with others. So I started with the 1890 land grants because they had agreements in place with the Forest Service and the USDA, and we're able to go to the rural communities. So we visited the CIAA in February because Virginia State is an 1890 land grant and a CIAA school. So then the CIAAs was, what about us?
Yeah.
I said, we coming.
Right.
So we were at Livingstone's job fair, career fair. We will be at several of the other ones. I just yesterday I spoke with North Carolina Central. They've got a real estate program that they've just started. So I'll be helping them with their real estate program.
Man, you have a lot of information you can share to help these institutions.
Oh, yeah. Just hit 10kblackappraisers.com. And then that'll get you to our 10,000 Minority Appraisers Foundation page. But again, we're in the process of updating that, so we will be able to help everybody. So again, when I started, I was advocating for black people, but as I traveled, there is no leadership in the appraisal industry, so why not us?
Right.
And we can advocate for everybody and truly make America great.
Last question, and I know this is so interesting, we could go on and on. Hedge fund. What's going on with the hedge funds in regards to residential housing?
You got any easy questions? So one of the things that happened in the last meltdown was residential real estate became an investment class in and of itself. And so because of its stability, hedge funds, they took money off of Wall Street and started packaging it and buying homes. They were really, really cheap and they were able to get them. Now homes are going up. Even though the interest rates are going up, typically when interest rates go up, prices go down. But in this market, they're not going down precipitously because there's no inventory.
Right.
And so it's still a demand driver. And there are whole subdivisions being built and sold out to hedge funds before they even finish.
And it's basically about rental with them, right?
It's all about rental and cash flow. And again, it's supply and demand. There is no supply.
Well, you can't outbuild guys who got billions of dollars. I mean, I don't care. You can't. You build 20 subdivisions in Atlanta tomorrow. If I've got BlackRock and three others, they got $5 billion to spend. They can just buy it. You can't outbuild their capacity.
And here's the other thing that I've seen is really, really sad. I've seen people that have been able to get a house in the last couple of years have to sell their house because they can't afford to pay the property taxes because the values have gone through the roof. So that really is very heartbreaking. You wait all this time to get in the game, and as soon as you get in the game, the old football is pulled from under the old Charlie Brown effect, or the ladder is pulled up. So again, it's going to take everybody working intentionally, deliberately, in order to have these solutions.
As our follow to that is that we're working. The hedge funds are out of control. I mean, there's a class of individuals that are just out of control. They're affecting the hospital industry, the healthcare industry. They're affecting everything. What we're suggesting that the tax bills are coming due. There's going to be have to renew the tax policies next year. We believe that all these things where the hedge funds are doing a disservice to the economy need to be reined in with higher taxes. Like, you can't own 1,000 units and have it count as passive income and not pay any taxes on it.
And they're not being regulated.
Right. So we've got that regulation's come. We're gonna have to start advocating for that regulation.
Okay, advocating. There you go again. I just commend you and the two of you for working together. And I've been knowing Attorney Kimble for a number of years. But that is, you and I met 2 or 3 years ago, and I was so impressed with what you were doing. We met in D.C., but for you to be so committed and the information that you bring, I'm going to ask Attorney Kimble to bring you on a regular basis, because, man, this information you're giving us, you don't get this out of the 6 o'clock news or CNN or reading your local newspaper or national newspaper. This is good stuff.
Well, Dr. Steele, thank you. I was in D.C. a couple of months ago, and I heard some people over talking about me. He was like, "Well, who is he? He just came out of nowhere." And I had shared with Kevin that made me tickle. I've been doing this for 40 years. So
wow.
If that's out of nowhere, then okay, yeah. I came out of nowhere. But I got a lot of battle scars and bruises, and I'm thankful to be here and be standing. And when I was blessed with the vision, God just told me to go do it. He didn't tell me how he was going to do it. But my pastor used to always tell us, he don't give you a vision without making a provision.
That's right.
And so my job is just to be obedient and follow it and see where it takes me. But when I see these young folks on our tour and they light up on how I can connect whatever they're doing to the supply chain through valuation, it gives them all kind of opportunities.
Sure.
And what we want them to be able to do is compete in the future. The appraisal profession is not dead. You just need to update your skill set so you can compete.
Right.
It's not your right to be able to have this profession. And so we are introducing the kids to drone training. So that's a career pathway in and of itself. And so again, I talked about the Forest Service and the Interior. They manage over 400 million acres of land. The easy way to inspect some of that is by drones, because some of those power lines and some of those uses are currently being inspected by helicopters. So again, in the agricultural space, hemp has been legal since 2018. We work with farmers in the ag space, and a lot of the farmers in their heirs property are getting the same fees that grandpa got in 1972 because they don't know their value.
They don't know.
So we advise them on hemp and how it can be a booming crop. We teach between the difference between hemp and cannabis. We teach between why hemp was criminalized and why cannabis was criminalized. Now, I'm gonna give you this one. I'm gonna let you, I ain't gonna give you no more, Dr. Steele. If hemp was criminalized as a part of the Industrial Revolution, if hemp's not criminalized, Henry Ford built a car out of hemp in 1941. It was lighter than steel and 10 times stronger.
Yep. So they advocated, the steel industry advocated to keep the hemp out of the.
And you can't get high smoking hemp. It's got less than 3% THC. So again, back to Slim Charles, we're gonna ride on the lie that hemp is illegal and criminal, and cannabis. So the government made it legal for hemp in 1942 because during World War II, all of the ropes were disintegrating in the water that were made out of nylon. They couldn't stand up to the sea salt. Back to the hemp. When they started making the ropes out of hemp, they held up. So hemp is like a super crop. You can use it for food, clothing, building supplies.
Do you have African Americans involved with this?
Some of them are starting to get there, but not the way that they should, and most of them don't even know about the opportunity. So in the valuation space, we advocate for that too with the farmers and with the land grant schools. We're blessed to be able to be in those places and speak, and the whole goal is bringing awareness. And once we bring awareness, then we can work on the expansion.
Right.
But if you don't know the opportunities exist, there's no way to expand on it.
Informing our people.
Absolutely. And, I'm not a great writer, but God has blessed me with a mouthpiece. So,
Well, it's a great one. I want to thank the two of you for coming on SCLC today. You won't get this on another network, ladies and gentlemen, because we tell it like it is. And to our bureau chief, Attorney Kimble, for introducing me to such a great institution in its own right. Mr. Dawson, you just don't know. We getting ready to rock and roll and take this all over the place. Just informing people what this is all about. Your last words.
I'm just thankful and incredibly humbled. Thank you all for having me. We have the only certified appraisal apprenticeship program in the country. So again, I'm the vessel, but that ain't nothing but God, and I'm thankful to be a part of this, and just thankful.
Well, thank you for being here, and our bureau chief, Attorney Kimble, just thank you for advocating. That one word. So many of our people don't know about the efficacy, impact that the two of you are talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it right here on SCLC Today. Stay tuned for other programs such as this, because between Mr. Dawson and Mr. Kimble, we're going to bring you and inform you of what's going on. Politics has never freed the oppressed. The oppressed must free politics. Godspeed.
Dear friends and supporters, I am delighted to extend a heartfelt invitation for you to attend the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC 65th Annual Convention, which will take place on August 9th and 10th at the Doubletree by Hilton Atlanta Airport Hotel in Atlanta, Georgia. This year's convention centered around the theme of education, economics, and gun reform. Requirements for a better community holds immense significance in our ongoing pursuit of justice and equality. Your presence at this convention is critical as we come together to address pressing issues impacting our communities, from bridging educational disparities to fostering economic empowerment and advocating for sensitive gun reform, and discussions will pave the way for tangible solutions and positive change. I urge you to join our president, Dr. Charles Steele Jr., and myself in Atlanta for a weekend of insightful dialogue, collaboration, and empowerment. Together, let's reaffirm our commitment to building a more just and equitable society for all.